I want to thank everyone here today for taking some time this afternoon as we take you through a webinar of how you can use digital portfolios to drive greater peer review and engagement in the classroom. I'm Zane Westmoreland, and alongside me is David Murdoch. We have been, for the last several years, been working with a company called Educator, and Educator is a company that is really focused on how digital portfolios are used, not only for academia, but also within industry with employers, in accreditation, within review and assessment. We've been looking a lot at all the different use cases that digital portfolios have to offer. And one of the things that we really learned about digital portfolios is they can be actually very difficult to coordinate and to use. So we made it our mission to really make it easier for educators to use digital portfolios inside and outside the curriculum. The other thing we do a lot of is a lot of work with digital portfolios within the classroom setting, and see how it works inside the classroom, see feedback from educators on troubles they face. And we're hearing that there's a lot of teachers and faculty that want to use digital portfolios in the classroom, but feel it's maybe a little too complicated or too complex for their students to go through a web creation or a website creation process. So a lot of our work has also been around breaking down the roadblocks there that students and academics face to make it a lot easier. We've been doing this for over 9 years of research and development. We actually started this out on the employer side, seeing how employers wanted to, how they wanted to see students. We worked a lot with students as well to see how they wanted to leverage digital portfolios. And we've most recently over the last 3 to 4 years, been working very closely with academics to see how digital portfolios can be used to drive and accelerate learning. And we are actively being used by several progressive educators like University of Toronto, Norwich University, and Brock University. Today's agenda is going to be around why digital portfolios matter, why peer review matters, how those two worlds can come together, and then we're also going to give you a real world example of an assignment and a walkthrough of how it's actually been executed in a real world classroom setting with hundreds of students. And at the end, we'll also have some recap and questions around the topic. Please feel free to use the chat function at any point throughout the presentation today if you do have any questions, and Dave will be monitoring that and jumping in at the right times to answer those questions. So we're going to start off with why digital portfolios matter. And we're not going to spend too much time on here. I know a lot of academics know a lot about digital portfolios and actually know a lot about peer review as well. A lot of the questions are more around actual execution of how do we actually get this into the classroom and see it in a real world setting. So we break down digital portfolio benefits for students and for academics and faculty. To begin with students, we believe one of the most important things digital portfolios do for students is it pushes them to collect and visualize learning outcomes. We speak to thousands of students, and one of the top things of feedback we get from them is that they are constantly learning and they're so busy moving from one subject to another that they don't take enough time to slow things down, to stop, and to take pause and reflect on the work that they've actually done. And we've seen that when students take their work and put it into a digital portfolio, it helps them do that. It helps them understand, okay, I'm going to put this up. How am I going to describe this? What are the learning outcomes of it? It helps them better focus and remember what they're learning in individual courses throughout their curriculum. That visualization really drives self-reflective learning. A lot of times we've heard stories of students going out to employers and employers will ask them if they have a particular skill set, and we're actually told the student tells them they don't have that skill set. But when you look back through the curriculum, there are several examples where the student actually did come across that learning outcome. They just didn't capture it or reflect on it enough. So digital portfolios helps really drive that point home. The third thing is it helps better align classroom learning outcomes with professional development. So one of the things with professional development, there tends to be a little bit of a barrier between what's learned in class and the direct ties to kind of the vocational aspects of those learning outcomes. Digital portfolios help the student better see what it is they're learning and why it matters to employers and how to project and position that for employers.
Right. Thanks, Zane. Yeah, it's it's interesting that digital portfolios and the concept has been around for literally decades, but is finding more and more interest in mainstream academia around what you can do with it and how it can start driving higher level needs in higher education. It's actually interesting with the greater chatter and interest in stronger evidence-based learning outcomes. Digital portfolios are being seen as a critical component that can reinforce and support this initiative within higher education. It's and in the programs, a number of the programs we're in, they're actually seeing and starting to understand how it can be a supporting mechanism and tool to drive in a much more user-friendly way evidence up through the system for better program assessment and even accreditation. We're even seeing pull from accreditation agencies demanding greater evidence, particularly in artifacts of learning outcomes. And so digital portfolios can play a very strong role in this regards. It was interesting just recently, a report published by Pearson titled Opportunity for Higher Education in the Era of Talent Economy. And one of the key concepts that they talked about was the learning passport, and that this learning passport needs to be a repository for students actually for their entire life and follow them, which is, you know, in many respects how our platform has been designed. So again, digital portfolios, very strong in that regards. And also for faculty and instructional designers who are trying to kind of mix things up, trying to make it more interesting for their students, and go beyond just essays and reports to grab the attention of their students. It's interesting, we were at the ISTE show in Philadelphia in June, and about 20 to 25% of all the poster sessions were by high school teachers talking about digital portfolios. So there's an underlying percolating interest, and that students are coming out of high school into higher education experienced in digital portfolios and finding the benefits in it. And therefore, higher education needs to start looking more at digital portfolios as a way to better engage and really go beyond the standard grading systems and all the benefits that go with it, understanding that students learn in different ways and that it can capture those ways. And also in regards to getting a direct and real world feedback on how students express their education. This is actually one of the key things and realizations of our premium partners, and especially the ability to collect digital portfolios into a directory where they can get a high level view of their students as groups, that they can actually see much deeper insights of how they're expressing their education as a cohort and better understand how they're representing that education to employers, and is that aligned with the expectations of the faculty and instructional designers, and can that be a feedback mechanism for them to improve curriculum and improve engagement with students.
So now we're going to shift gears a little to why peer review matters. And for students, one of the biggest things that we're told by teachers is they're increasingly becoming more difficult to engage. And one of the reasons they see that is they see the relationship with the students is to be very private. Students do their work, they hand it into the teacher, and they feel that there's a very private connection between the two. What peer review introduces is it introduces a fear of scrutiny with a peer. And we found that this actually leads to far greater care taken and far greater effort in assignments because they don't want their peers to see their work as being inferior or less. We've seen that this actually leads to several other benefits. It also prevents last minute drafting of assignments. We've seen that peer review also inspires many ideas for self-improvement as well for students that go through it. So we think these are great things for students in an area to help them better engage and dive deeper and put more effort and care into the work that they do so that it's more defendable, um, not only for the teacher, but also amongst their peers. The second thing is we've seen that switching to a reviewer role helps students gain perspective into how they're being graded. So this is one of the things that we found really fascinating with students after they graduate from university or college and started applying to jobs, was that they didn't put a lot of effort into understanding the way that employers assessed their resumes and their applications. And we wondered why this was. And we actually tracked it back to the university in the classroom level, where students don't spend enough time putting themselves in the shoes of a marker with a rubric to understand how they're being graded and how to get the most out of every assignment when it comes to grading. And we've seen that by putting them in that position in peer review, it really helps them to do that and helps them to make a lot of important improvements to their own assignments. We've also seen it develops stronger collaboration and communication skills. So one of the things that we recommend with peer review is that students talk to each other around the work and that they're able to better explain their work and able to answer questions on why they did things the way they did. And we found that this additional collaboration helps strengthen the ties within courses when students are better connected with each other and with the work that their peers are doing.
One of the top reasons that we hear from faculty for peer reviews is to increase student engagement, where they see an opportunity to get the students to better participate and to heighten their sense of engagement with the material, and where maybe the assignments are kind of career related or related to professional development. And you can really make it very interesting. We actually, in a number of our programs where students, when they understand Acadia, it's going to be used in the classroom, actually get excited, engaged with the tool. And the beauty with peer reviews is that you can bring, as Zane said, kind of the perspective of the employer into the classroom, get them to think from the other side, where as much as they get critiqued, maybe as somebody applying for a job, but they actually have to act as the employer and critique. And what we hear from students is that they get a whole new level of perspective of how to evaluate individuals that are at a similar level of themselves, and to gain insights into that process. It also drives higher quality student work. Whether you measure that with outcomes, actually a study that we often refer to is what University of Waterloo is doing with WAT-CV, where with peer review layered into their exercises, that the combination with digital portfolios, that they've been able to measure much stronger skill knowledge retention on average by 30%, and combining the two together. So peer review can actually improve the quality and retention of students. And this is through greater iteration, where they're seeing more visible learning outcomes as they go through iterations, where they might create a digital portfolio, then they get peer reviewed, and then they revise it again. But also for faculty, the benefit is that typically that final digital portfolio has a lot of the trivial areas kind of eliminated from it. It also can drive insights into how students view, assess, and represent their class learning outcomes. What we hear from faculty and from professors, that it actually is a great exercise for engaging a dialogue with your students, where they find actually it's such a new approach for them that they often like to talk to their professors or talk to their peers about what they learned from it, and that they find very strong insights from that. And one of the things that we do, one of the services we have for premium program partners, is that we help them to design assignments with peer reviews or with digital portfolios that we can help them, you know, understand what kind of experience that they want for their students and also for themselves, and also help them set up what insights that they can get from those exercises.
All right, right. So now that we kind of have those two bases covered, a lot of times classrooms won't take on both of these things in a singular assignment because it is often considered to be overwhelming for the student. We found if we can really minimize and simplify the digital portfolio, that you can actually put these two into a class in a very streamlined process. And we'll show you in our example assignment exactly what that looks like and how it works. But I do want to go how these two elements are better together. And how digital portfolios improve peer review is, first, we've seen a lot of peer review that's done usually tends to be focused on writing. So it's more writing based typically. Digital portfolios allows peer review to cross more dynamic, richer, and varied content. So you can get more peer review around things like visual assignments, around more reports, around references, around even video, around almost any type of schoolwork. And that seems to be something that a lot of academics tell us they really like about it, is that they're not confined to just one document or one piece. They can actually now apply peer review to a collection of items, whether it be reports or images, and have that all covered in one cohesive assignment. The second piece is around time and touch points. Usually, a lot of times what will happen in a course is a peer review will happen at one juncture in a course, and then they'll hand that in and that'll be done for the peer review. What they find with digital portfolios is that peer review can be applied several times throughout a semester. So for example, a digital portfolio can be set up at the beginning of a semester, and they can have a peer review once per month on all the updates and improvements that are happening, and keep more of an ongoing dialogue and more touch points throughout the course. The other thing that are great about digital portfolios is around connectivity. They're very easy to share, which means that there's not papers going missing or a need to continuously keep sending files to each other. As long as your peer has your link, they can go to it once a month, twice per month, and you can take their feedback and update it and capture that growth, and your peer can come back to it again. So it makes the whole process between two individuals in the peer review process that much easier. The other thing around peer review is it helps change the process just a little bit. The typical peer review process is usually focused around student work, the peer review, and then a teacher will come in and grade kind of the combination of those two. With the digital portfolio helps add two important additional elements to this process. The first one is it adds a reflection component. So you can get a reflection component based on what is provided to you by your peer based on that feedback. And you also have reflection based on the feedback that you provided to your peer. So we've been told by a lot of students that they have a lot of blinders when it comes to assessing or critiquing their own work. But when it's someone else's work, they see all the errors as that much clearer to them. And they find that when they contrast their peers' work with their own, they pick up on a lot of things they wouldn't have self-critiqued, but because they saw it in someone else, they were able to identify it in themselves and make improvements on there. The second piece that digital portfolios can help to add to this process is an action element. And this action element is really having students use the reflection that they did to improve their work prior to grading. And this has a couple of different benefits for the student. The first thing is it really tells them that why it's so important for reflection, because you can now utilize that reflection and that peer feedback to make an improvement that will help you get a better grade. And as we know, for a lot of students, grades are somewhat of the currency within higher education for what defines value. And this also helps academics move the grading process from, instead of the student work and the peer review, to the reflection and to the action elements of the assignment, which really leads to higher quality student work at the end of the day. So I'm going to go right now into an actual real world example of how this is being used. And I'm going to share the actual syllabus from one of our partners. I've removed their name, but it's pretty much the same syllabus that they use in their classroom. And this is basically how it goes to the students. So it's an Acadia digital portfolio assignment with peer review. And I'll give you a quick read into what the assignment description is. So it's in this assignment, students will be given a job description. And using the semiotic skills learned in the course, they'll have to build a digital portfolio to persuade the employer that they're the best candidate for the job. As a part of this assignment, students will use peer review to receive feedback on the initial draft of their digital portfolio, and then they'll use peer review feedback to improve their final digital portfolio. The value is 20% of the grade, 10% based on peer review elements of the grading rubric, and 10% based on the reflection that they write on that. And one of the important things you'll see here is how they stage the due dates. So there's a due date for the initial portfolio, a due date for the peer review, and then a due date for the updated digital portfolio. And this can be scattered or staged anyhow a program likes. This particular program likes to keep them fairly tight, about a week between each due date. The learning objectives here, students will demonstrate the application of theories learned in course to shape the way they represent to employers, and students will demonstrate the ability to leverage peer review to drive self-improvement. So I just want to double down on that point there, where one of the important things for this program wasn't that it was peer review for the sake of peer review. They wanted to make sure that students used peer review to an end so that they can see results and why we do peer review, which is the improvement. And they wanted to make sure that the way students were graded captured that aspect of it. The third learning objective here is they wanted to help students better demonstrate how to effectively incorporate digital media beyond a resume. And this goes to a lot of the things that are told to us by employers around when they're looking at students and they're assessing students based on resume alone. They find that students look very similar, especially if you look at students coming out of your own programs. If you were to assess them based on just portfolio, most of your students would be, share 80 to 90% of a commonality. Where employers are telling us they're seeing a lot of differentiation today is in those additional assets, actual work examples. Digital media goes beyond a resume, things like video introductions, all these other elements is where they're telling us they're looking for differentiation with each student.
Right, and this ties in with the trend for evidence-based outcomes, helping the program kind of line up with helping students create the artifacts and the package where they're designing it for this particular course, but many of these items can be repurposed and reused for actual job applications at a later stage. I would also add, one of the philosophical aspects of Acadia when we interface with faculty is to try and work with them to find the balance between complexity and simplicity in the assignments and the communication in the curriculum, where if a program engages with us, we're always a sounding block for them and help them think through how they can design an assignment. And what we try to do is try and make sure that the communication material to the students and the faculty has the least amount of noise in it, but make sure there's enough information in there so there's no confusion. It's a balancing act.
Yes. And if you're thinking this will be difficult or overwhelming for students, the courses that have actually run this in the past have in excess of 300 students per class going through these assignments, and we typically have less than one support requests on average out of those 300 students. So it's actually, students do really well in understanding how to drive this, and the assignments actually go surprisingly smoothly, is what our educating partners tell us about how, you know, integrating and implementing and deploying this process is. So the way they break this up is they break it up into three parts. The first part is they want the student to get a job description to review, and they want them to build a digital portfolio based on that job description. It's a very simple process. And what they're looking for is they're looking if a student is able to not just push themselves out as kind of a one-size-fits-all solution to every employer's problem, but they want students to start understanding what employers are looking for in them and start tailoring and aligning their messaging to be more relevant to what that particular employer is looking for, especially through a digital portfolio. And you can see here in this initial digital portfolio, they're looking for a name and the job and name of a company, a professional image, branding statement and tagline, background imagery or branding banner. They're looking for 3 relevant skills, a tailored resume, and they also are asking for a visual text, which is one of the assignments that's in their course. So if you have, you can go through your entire curriculum and choose any particular assignment you think would look good in the digital portfolio that's relevant to your individual needs or individual program. One of the important things to note as well is that for privacy reasons, the school requires that students leave all contact information like phone number and address off of their resume and their portfolio for their peer review process. So I'm going to take you through right now what this actually looks like from a student side, how quickly and easily this digital portfolio creation is. A lot of times students would look to this and see this as a 3 to 4 hour exercise in putting this all together.
Right. There was one question, what discipline of this course? This is, how would you describe it, Zane?
This is a semiotics and rhetoric course. So it's this one's a partial media and partial type of marketing, business marketing course.
Yeah, it's actually about a few years back, they introduced digital portfolios as part of the assignment, where the assignment before that was analysis of advertisements. So it's not a career oriented course. It is an actual kind of, as Zane said, a kind of quasi marketing course. So this is and this is part of the theme of the program we're working with, which is how to have multiple touch points across different programs with the platform and the digital portfolio. So when they graduate, they're very comfortable with professionally projecting themselves within a digital portfolio in a digital manner.
Right, right. So I'm going to go into a live demo just so you can see what the students see. So I'll get through part 1 and then I'll show you what happens. Then we'll come back and we'll see what part 2 looks like and part 3. So I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to pop this up here. Everyone can see still?
Yes.
Okay, so this is just a demo student account. As you can see, there's nothing really much in here. I've got no showcases. Just for your knowledge, a showcase is what we call a digital portfolio on Educator. And on Educator, they can create more than one showcase. So a student will typically go through their college university experience and they may have 20, 30 different showcases, one for each different course. And the showcase has been designed from the ground up to minimize all the roadblocks students typically face when creating a digital portfolio. So one of the things you'll see on the right-hand side here is My Library, and this is where students can add all the different files that are relevant to the assignment. So you can see in here, I've already got a sample resume here. I've got a supporting document, which is one logo design. They could have schoolwork in here as well. I've got one journal file as well. I've got no media or references yet here. So one of the things to really look at here is how we move this forward. So here. and how students add to this. So adding an item to here is really very simple. We just go into supporting documents. They'll go and add a supporting document. They'll give the document a name, and then they'll choose the name of the file they want to add. So I'm going to give you a sample document, which I'm just going to say it's a course review, just for demonstration of how easy this is for students to use. And I'll just say this is a supporting document example 1. And we've got a description here as well that they can use to give context to the reviewer of why they're showing this particular file or document in their digital portfolio. I'm going to go ahead and save this. So you can see just like that, our supporting document here is created. Now, when students go to create a digital portfolio, usually you have to put a lot of thought into how you want to lay everything out, all the color schemes you want to use. We've actually taken all of that guesswork out for students because we spent a lot of time with both academics and employers. And what we found is most of the time they actually say that the design choices that students make actually are not helpful to the student. They make it more difficult for the employer to find what they're looking for. So we spent a lot of time with employers and markers, graders, TAs, and faculty to see what's the best layout to most quickly review and assess digital portfolios. And that's what the Showcase Builder helps them to create. So I'm gonna just call this my, I'll call it a classroom example. And we take them through these 5 easy steps: the job title, the company, and the reviewer name. So I'm just gonna say this is for a marketing, I'll say it's a marketing intern. I'll say it's for TD Bank. And if I don't know the reviewer's name, I don't have to put it in. Usually what happened in the peer review is they put their peer review's name in here. But for this purpose, I'm just going to put hiring manager in here. And then we take them to the next step. What's the targeted message? You can use a branding statement or a tagline, 3 to 5 most relevant skills, and a showcase message. I'm just going to say I'm a marketing aspiring marketing graduate, 3 to 5 most relevant skills. So let's say I've got a degree in marketing. I've got
These are all freestyle, as you can see, for the skill
HubSpot
sets.
certification. And I'll also say, let's just say I've got 400 plus followers on Twitter. It's whatever would be relevant to the student. And for most students, these are second year. So these are usually more simplistic skills that are aligned to the job. And then they can go in and just put in a quick showcase message. A quick showcase message is, we like to define it as in a paragraph, why are you creating this digital portfolio? So I'm going to leave this blank for now, and I'm just going to move on to the appearance. So you can see the appearance is broken down. I can add a showcase photo. So I'm going to go and add a showcase photo here. I'm just going to put in a profile picture. And then you can also choose a cover image. You can add your own, or you can choose one of the preset ones. And as a school, you can also add ones that are relevant to your school. And then last but not least, here we can go into content, and we can choose what we want to include in this digital portfolio. So I'm just going to include a resume sample here. And we can see it's loading right here for us. This is just an example 1. I'm going to put an example of logo design, the document I uploaded, and the journal file. I'm going to go ahead and click done. And in the advanced tab, we just have the option here to change our name if we'd like. So this is beneficial if a person has particular designations that they'd like to add in. So let's say they have a CGA or CPA, or they're a doctor, or they're a master's students. They can go in here to emphasize that in their name. And they've got the option here as well on which item they'd like to display first. So everything here looks good. And I'm going to go ahead and save this showcase. And we can see that immediately right here, the showcase is actually created for us on the fly, and it's ready for us to actually view in real time. So I'm going to click view here, and we can see this digital portfolio was put together for us almost instantly. So we've done time comparisons between this and using things like website builders, and it's actually about 90% faster to build a digital portfolio on Acadia using this method. And the great thing about this is for students, they can actually learn and master this process within 3 to 5 minutes. And they're good to actually use this across any course they come into contact with it. So the last piece of this is to share it immediately with their course. So we have a showcase share code. And this is a code you give your students that allows them to share it instantly with you. And they would just see it come up here and they share now, and that's it. They've successfully now shared it with you as a teacher. So it's really that easy for the student side. You can see we just went through that process, the technology side of the process anyways, within about 5 to 10 minutes. And this is why students like using Educator and this process so much. But I'm going to jump back in here to dive into the second part of this, which is the peer review. So now what the TA is going to do, he's going to get all these showcases given to him or her, and they're actually going to assign a showcase to each student in their class to review. And what they're going to do is they're going to give each student a copy of the actual end rubric that they'll use themselves to mark students. And they'll also give them the link of a digital portfolio to assess. And it's the student's responsibility to assess that portfolio, complete the rubric, and send it to them via email as a PDF within 5 days. The timing is really up to the individual program. In this case, it's a 5-day turnaround they expect. They also,
in fact, actually, also the professor had the TAs choosing the matchup of the students with their peer, so that friends are not marking each other's digital portfolios, that it's random and it's controlled, determined by the TA.
Yes, yes. And in addition to the rubric, they also asked the peer reviewers to list at least 2 positive and 2 negative comments about the individual's digital portfolio, to give them some direct things, to know where they're strong or have strengths, and so that they know where they also may have some weaknesses to work on. So the third part of the assignment is to receive your review, to reflect on it, to update your digital portfolio, and finally to submit. So after receiving the peer review, it says that you'll receive feedback to improve your digital portfolio for final submission. And they also want you to write a maximum 2-page double-sided reflection on A, what you learned from the peer review process, and B, how you acted on what you learned to improve your digital portfolio. So this is something that's really important that we're seeing with the self-reflection here, is we want to put more direct ties to action. What we're hearing a lot of complaints from teachers around, especially when it comes to self-reflection, is very generic, non-critical, non-in-depth self-reflection, very superficial self-reflection. So what this program is looking to do is drive deeper thought by having students actually reflect on the actions they took in light of the self-reflection process. So the reflection on the peer review must answer the following questions. What are the top 2 things you learned from your peers showcase? What are the top 2 things that you learned from your peers review of your own showcase? And how did you act on the 4 things you learned above to improve your digital portfolio for final submission? So that is what the student does. They create that final reflection. They add it to their digital portfolio. And I'll show you exactly what that's like. And because they've already submitted it to their TA, as I showed you in that step before, they don't have to resubmit it. It's actually live shared with the TA. So all the improvements are actually captured live. So they don't have to do anything but update their showcase prior to the deadline date.
Right, so they're not actually creating 2 different digital portfolios. They create the initial digital portfolio. They get the peer review, and then they modify it. So the teacher, the TAs don't want to see kind of before and after. They just want to see what is the final product, and then the review, the reflection, so that they can infer and understand how that occurred. So it streamlines the process so that they're not marking 2 different digital portfolios. They're just marking 1, but they're getting the benefits of that iterative process.
Right. So I'm going to show you here exactly what would happen. So I would go back in here and I would add additional, let's just say it was an additional journal item. I'll say add a journal. And I could type it in here as well, but I'll just say it's peer review reflection. And I can go ahead and add a file that is reflective of that. I'm just going to use a dummy file here for now, just so you can get the understanding of it. So that reflection is here. Then I would just go into my showcase and I would just update it to include my reflection piece here, peer review reflection. And let's say part of the feedback I received was that they didn't understand, why we chose the showcase cover image that we did for a marketing position, to put in a picture of a building. So I could go in here and change it to something maybe more artistic looking or more design oriented, or something better aligned to maybe what a marketer may have on their digital portfolio. So I'm just going to use this here, something that looks a little more creative, and I'll save the showcase. And we can see here, I'm going to go and reload the showcase here, and we can see that it has been completely updated to reflect the changes that we want. So the great thing about this is, as we were mentioning before, the teacher on their side, this is all made very easy for them because of the share code. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you from what the teacher's point of view is, what they see. So this is an example of a small classroom. Right now there's only 2 students, and you saw that I just submitted my showcase into this classroom. So when I refresh this, you'll actually see the 3rd digital portfolio show up in here. And the teacher can easily just go into each individual person and see what they have to offer for grading, provide them with direct feedback if they'd like through the contact me button. And it's really that simple. And they can also search for names, qualifications, everything like that easily within the search function. So if they just wanted to search for Ron, then we could just pull up Ron. Or if they just wanted to search up for individuals that had marketing as a keyword of one of their skills, they could easily do that as well. So as you can see, all of this is meant to be very simple for teaching and for marking. In the case of the example where there was 300 students, there's actually 10 different TAs here, and each TA gets their own group of students to mark and go through. So it really simplifies the process to be able to break it down in this way. The other really interesting thing about working with these groupings of students is it allows you to contrast students over time. So for example, one TA group could send one message to students or one job description. Another TA could have another job description for students, and you could contrast to see how those students differed as a whole. In relation to that. The other interesting thing that you can do here is, let's say you notice an issue that a lot of students are facing. So for example, in one of the courses, they noticed a lot of students were using very unprofessional profile pictures or digital portfolio pictures. So they actually set up a workshop or a session on how to take better pictures for professional applications. And you're able to contrast to see how did that impact the end result compared to the previous semester. And to see if it's actually working in practice. So that sort of insight and contrast is something that has been highly valued as well with the educators we're working with.
Right. And as you saw, the access to that directory is effectively 1 or 2 steps. It's actually one of the key feedbacks that we've had from programs of why they've stopped using LMS portfolios. Is it was just too many steps too confusing for a lot of faculty. Versus the feedback is that this directory capability within Acadia is so easy to access.
Yeah. In fact, where the schools we're in, they actually don't run any formal training for their graders on how to interact with this, because it is just point and click for them. They're given a password protected link, they sign in with the credentials, and then they're off to the races, assessing student work and grading it. So
right.
Really,
it's actually, I'd encourage you also just to go to University of Waterloo's WatCV site for, because they have documented extremely well what they did with their implementation of digital portfolios with peer reviews, and fantastic work. Really demonstrated the efficacy of peer reviews with digital portfolios. And The challenge is simplifying the process and the experience for both the faculty and the students, so that there's not as much overheads and it's much easier to implement, and doesn't increase workloads. That in fact it can reduce workloads if you know how to streamline that process.
Yes, absolutely. So the last thing I'm just going to take you through here is just to see the assignment staging. Just it's very simple, broken into three parts: initial student work, initial the peer review process, and then the reflection piece. And the only grading that the grader has to do is on part three. But it's just important that we find that showing student this kind of staging really helps them understand how it works and what's expected of them in this process. So now I'd like, if there's any questions at all, would love to answer them. Before we can also give you some insight in how you can use a KD8 as well, which will come up in the next slide. Okay,
Hello, I have a question about other use cases. So far you've all mentioned how you can use it in digital portfolios. And that it's beyond review of writing. Are there any other use cases that you've employed a KD8 for?
In peer review or digital portfolios
I'm
general?
thinking about peer review because people, in a lot of assignments, you have to submit multiple kinds of work. I'm thinking about code and documentation, but I'm sure there are other cases like that as well.
Yes, yeah, so there are examples where it's been used in computer sciences as well, where they'll have embeds from things like CodePen or other places online where they can share code. We do have an embedding feature that's available in our media section, so they can embed these third-party sources there. We've also seen it used in places like nursing and in healthcare. As well as in public administration. We've really found that because digital portfolios are so diverse, we really haven't found a group of students or academics that have told us they can't work with it. It's just dependent on what files and what documents they want to share for their own particular courses.
Right. There's another question here. Instructors see all students, but how are peers designated by the instructor? How do the peers kind of get in touch with each other?
Okay, so what the TA gets as a part of this grouping, they get a list of all the students in their group, along with not the email address, along with the code or the web URL of that student's digital portfolio. So all they do is share that digital portfolio name and link with the student, whoever they've tied them off with, and that's how they connect the dots there. And once the TA has done that, it's up to the student to get in touch with their peer to give them the review.
Right. Yeah, so that's one of the things to understand is that each digital portfolio that's created on our platform, each individual students can create an unlimited, if they have a premium account, unlimited amount of these digital portfolios, and each of them have a unique URL, and that can be shared with whoever they choose to share it with. They can also password protect it so that nobody can just go in and look at their personal information. But it's really easy for sharing, very similar to if students have Wix or Weebly accounts. The challenge is with Wix and Weebly accounts, for every time you create one, they're kind of a disparate, separate web. Versus with ours, it's all cohesively structured within a personal account. And the students, when they create their account, they have this for life. So as we were talking about the concept of the learner's passport, their accounts stay with them for life. So everything they create on it stays with them for life.
Right. And I'd also add to David's point there, one of the benefits here for the school in this process is it allows them to really just focus on the the in-class areas, but it also opens up a lot of opportunities to leverage the work that's been done in the class. So for example, in the programs that use this in the classroom, they can now go out and connect with industry partners, leading employers. And what they do is they go to students and say, if you're interested in this employer, they'll create a grouping, just like you saw the TA had, and they'll actually create a grouping for that specific employer and get that collection of students in front of that employer. And these are students that have been told by the employers that are the best collection of students that they've ever seen, because they're students that don't just have a resume, and they're also completed with work examples, references, and more. So it has a lot of further reaching applications than the classroom, but we believe that the classroom is where it all begins and where it all starts, and where students can actually get very comfortable in using these sorts of technologies. And one of the keys for us here is to have them spend less money, less time and effort focused on the technology side of it, and more of the time focused on the content and the quality side of it. And that's one of the biggest pieces of feedback we got from students that were using website builders and things like that, were that they were spending so much time figuring out technology. And a lot of times, a lot of the frustrations that came with increased support needs for the teacher, the class. And a lot of the times it got away from the teacher, where they were spending more time focused on the technology than on the learning outcomes they wanted to focus on. So that's why we think we've been able to have such high success rates within the classroom, especially when it comes to support, or lack thereof support in the classes that we're in. And we really hope that more programs can start integrating digital portfolios into the classroom, because it is that much more simpler than it has been in the past.
Any other questions?
Okay, so what I'll do here is I'm going to just show you, if you're interested in using a KDA, trying it out, testing it out, we do have a completely free plan that's free forever for students, and it comes completely free with 2 digital portfolios that they can use. Educator is 100% advertising free and privacy centric. One of the things we looked at in the academic space was not having academics push students onto platforms that are looking to just sell student data to employers. So we don't sell any student data to employers. The student is always the front and center in terms of privacy. There's no ads in there at all. And all of our funding comes from institutions or schools that choose to upgrade to our pro or premium services. We've got transparent pricing and a business model that you can view online at this link. And we also have no surprises, and there's no pressure to upgrade at any time. We really just want to see more students leveraging the power of digital portfolios. We believe there's massive value there. And we think that, if schools really embrace it and they really like it, then if they see the need to upgrade, then they will. If not, that's completely fine as well. And if you are interested, you can sign up online at our website at s.acadiate.com/signup. So, really hope you can go in there. You can test it out with your students. If you're interested or you want some help in this process, Dave and I are available to you as a resource to help you get off the ground and started. If you have any questions or just want some one-on-one feedback with us, we're happy to schedule a meeting with you as well. And you can reach out to either Dave or myself, David@acadiate.com or Zane@acadiate.com, and we'd be happy to walk you through the steps you can go through.
Right. And also, we're going to be in Pittsburgh in November at the annual Pod Network Conference.
Yeah, so if you're going to be there, hope to see you there. Would love to connect, and we could walk you through some more real world examples there as well. So that's it for this webinar. Again, thank you everybody for taking the time to be with us today. Hope you took something away from today's webinar, and we'd love to keep the conversation going. This is an area we're deeply passionate about, the way that digital portfolios can better enhance the learning experience and outcomes for students. And this is an area we're going to be continuously working on and pushing the boundaries in. So thank you again, everyone, for your time today. And we look forward to connecting with you or hearing from you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.